The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council glowed with thousands of hovering lights, shining down on the largest gathering in centuries, a ceremony called the Oath Circle, where every species of the galaxy walked to their seat, bowed their head, and renewed their loyalty to the council that claimed to keep peace, order, and balance across the stars. But today something felt wrong. Something heavy hung in the air like an old wound that no one wanted to remember. Because at the far end of the curved ceremonial ring, beyond the shimmering banners and proud insignias of hundreds of worlds, sat a single seat that remained untouched, silent, ignored. Seat number 00, a simple black throne covered in layers of dust so thick it looked like time itself tried to bury it. And the oldest council members refused to look at it, refused to acknowledge it, refused to let their minds speak the truth their hearts tried so hard to forget. Younger species whispered among themselves as they walked past it, their feathers shaking, their tails curling, their tentacles twitching nervously, asking each other softly, "Why is that seat here? Who does it belong to? Why is it never cleaned?" But no one answered, because no one dared to answer, and every time someone got too close, one of the senior council guards would step forward and gently but firmly steer them away, muttering, "Ignore that seat. It does not concern you." And yet the seat remained like a ghost in the hall, a reminder of something erased, something forbidden, something that made even the bravest species feel a cold shiver crawl down their spines. The ceremony opened with the sound of the council bell, a massive crystal instrument that hummed across the hall with a deep echo that vibrated through bones and metal alike, announcing the beginning of the Oath Circle. One by one, each species walked forward, bowed their heads at their assigned seat, placed their hands or claws or tendrils against the glowing sigil of loyalty, and recited the same oath they had recited for centuries. We stand united under the council. We kneel to order. We bow to peace, and the hall filled with their voices, a chorus of unity that stretched across the galaxy. But behind all the pride and ceremony, fear flickered quietly because everyone noticed something they were not allowed to speak. Seat 00 still remained untouched, still covered in dust, still waiting for someone who never came. The council leader, a tall scaled figure with shimmering wings that reflected the lights of the hall, tried to keep calm, tried to keep smiling, but even he could not stop his gaze from drifting toward that seat. And every time his eyes landed on it, his wings twitched with an almost invisible shake as memories he had spent decades burying crawled back to the surface of his mind. He forced himself to focus on the ceremony. "Next delegation," he called, voice echoing with practiced authority, and another species walked forward to kneel, to bow, to pledge loyalty. But as they bowed, one of the younger members accidentally glanced toward seat 00 and whispered too loudly, "Why is that seat still here if no one uses it?" The council leader's wings snapped open in panic, and he quickly intervened, "Silence, young one. Continue the oath. Do not look at that seat." The young alien obeyed, but the whisper had already spread through the nearby rows. Small murmurs, nervous glances, frightened curiosity. Something ancient was waking inside the hall, not physically, but in memory, rising like a shadow the council tried too hard to bury. The ceremony continued, but each passing moment the quiet tension grew like an invisible fire. And then, as the final species stepped forward to bow, as the hall prepared to close the Oath Circle for another 100 years, something happened. Something no one expected, something no one was ready for. A sound. A strange pulse. A low, deep vibration that rolled across the hall like a heartbeat returning after centuries of silence. The lights flickered. Council members tensed. Aides froze mid-step. The council leader felt his wings stiffen, his heart leap into his throat. "What is that?" someone whispered. "Is it part of the ceremony?" another murmured. "No," the oldest council guard whispered, voice shaking with fear. "No, not again." And then the pulse came again, sharper, louder, stronger. A tone. A message. A frequency. Ancient. Recognizable. Forbidden. The hall's entire holographic system glitched, screens flickering, light panels shaking as if something powerful was trying to break through a locked door. Suddenly the main display, the center screen where the Oath Circle oath was supposed to play, went black. Every species stared at it, breath caught, instinct screaming. Then the black screen lit up with a symbol so old, so dangerous, so erased from galactic history that half the room gasped in terror, dropping to their knees instinctively. It was the symbol of Earth. A white circle. A blue line. A silent world forgotten by the galaxy. The council leader's wings snapped open in full panic and he screamed, "Shut it down. Now!" Technicians scrambled, slamming buttons, ripping out power cores, shouting into comms, "System override. System lockout. We can't stop it. The signal is coming from outside." "No, it's coming from everywhere." "What do you mean everywhere?" "It's broadcasting through the hall itself." The screens flickered again. The lights dimmed. And then, a voice. A human voice. Deep, cold, calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm that destroys worlds. "We bow to no one." The hall erupted in screams. Some species fell backward. Others covered their ears. Several council guards drew their weapons, pointing them at nothing, trembling. Because the voice was unmistakably human, and humans were not supposed to exist anymore. Humans were erased from records. Humans were removed from the council. Humans were forgotten deliberately. Humans were gone. The council leader shouted again, "Shut it down. Now. Close the hall doors. Cut the transmission." But every console in the hall went dark. Every emergency panel failed. The lights flickered again as the voice repeated, this time louder, carrying an authority that made every species feel small. "We bow to no one." And then the seat 00, the forgotten throne, began to vibrate. The dust on it trembled, lifting into the air as if gravity itself was being pulled toward that single chair. A faint blue glow ignited at its base, so soft at first that only a few noticed, but then it grew brighter, 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 until the entire hall was washed in ghostly blue light. The council leader stumbled backward, eyes wide in horror. "No, this cannot be. They were erased. They were gone. They cannot return." But the voice spoke again, a whisper sharp as a blade. "You erased our name." The hall temperature dropped. "You erased our history." A deep rumbling began under the floor. "You erased our place." The seat glowed brighter. But you could not erase the truth. Every species trembled. Earth never bowed. The entire hall shook as the seat's glow exploded into a beam of blue-white light, shooting up into the ceiling, cracking through the council's shimmering banners. And then, for the first time in hundreds of years, a hologram appeared above seat 00. A human silhouette. Tall, straight, calm, wearing no armor, holding no weapon. But the aura surrounding it was stronger than any army in the galaxy. The hall fell silent. Not because they chose to, but because the presence demanded it. The human figure lifted its head slowly, revealing nothing but the faint outline of a face. No eyes. No details. Just the impression of a being that stood alone against the stars. The council leader stepped forward shakily, wings trembling so violently he could barely stand. Who are you?" he whispered. The human silhouette responded with a cold calmness that slipped into every corner of the hall like a rising tide. "We are the ones you tried to forget." The council leader swallowed hard. "Humans are extinct." The hologram tilted its head slightly. "Are we?" And the hall gasped. Because the tone was not anger. Not revenge. Not hatred. It was disappointment. Ancient disappointment. Deep disappointment. The kind that cuts deeper than fury. "You erased our seat," the human voice continued. "You erased our name." The council leader whispered, "Seat 00 was yours." The hologram stepped forward slightly, its aura pulsing. Earth bowed to no one. Not then. Not now. And the council leader finally understood why the seat remained dusty, untouched, unclaimed. It was not abandoned. It was waiting. The hologram said one final line, a line that shook the galaxy more than any war ever had. The council forgot why our seat was empty. The hall lights shattered. The hologram vanished. The signal ended. And the entire galaxy held its breath as the voice repeated from every speaker in the hall. "We bow to no one." The truth was awake. Earth was returning. And the galaxy would never be the same again. Panic spread through the Galactic Council Hall like a living storm, rolling from one species to another as the echoes of the human voice faded into the shattered lights above them, leaving behind only a suffocating silence and the cold truth that something ancient and forbidden had awakened, something the galaxy tried to bury for centuries but could never truly kill. And now every alien felt that truth sinking into their bones like ice. The council leader could barely stand, his wings trembling so violently that even the guards noticed, but he forced himself forward, staring at the still-glowing Seat 00 as if it were a ghost rising from a grave he helped dig, and for the first time in his long life, he felt genuinely afraid, not of an enemy fleet, not of a rebellion, but of a single sentence spoken by a species he thought was gone forever. "We bow to no one." Those words kept echoing in his head, looping again and again, louder each time, until he felt as if the entire hall was whispering them. Representatives huddled together, some shaking, some crying, some whispering prayers to their gods, while others looked around with wide, terrified eyes, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. A young aquatic species stepped forward, her fins trembling as she pointed at Seat 00. "Council leader, you said humans were extinct. You said they were gone forever. How is this possible?" He opened his mouth to answer, but the words died before they formed because he realized he didn't know the truth anymore, or maybe he never did. Before he could reply, one of the oldest council members, a frail creature with thin skin and clouded eyes, stepped toward the group, leaning heavily on his cane, his voice shaking not from age but from memory. "Younger ones, listen to me. Seat 00 was never empty because humans disappeared." A heavy silence fell as everyone turned toward him. It was empty because humans refused to kneel. Gasps and frightened murmurs rippled across the hall. "Refused to kneel," someone whispered. "But all species kneel during the oath." "Not all," the old one said. "Not humans." The council leader's wings twitched in anger and fear. "Do not speak of them. You silenced their history," the old one interrupted, voice cracking. "But I lived through it. I was there when Earth still had a voice in this hall." Everyone froze. Even the guards looked stunned. "Humans never accepted the oath circle," the old one continued. "They said no being should kneel before another. They said unity is not built on submission." His voice grew hollow. "And for that, the council punished them." A chilling silence filled the hall. The youngest species looked horrified while the eldest lowered their eyes in shame. "We erased their name from the archives," the old one continued. "We labeled them unstable, dangerous, primitive." His voice dropped to a whisper. "We pretended they were gone so no one would ask why they left." The aquatic ambassador trembled. "But why erase them completely? Why not let their seat remain a symbol?" The old one looked at the glowing seat with a haunted expression. "It remained because we feared them. Even in absence, we feared them." The council leader slammed his staff against the floor. "Enough. Humans are extinct. This signal is a trick, a deception. But his voice cracked. His lie failed, because the hologram's presence still tingled in the air like static electricity. The hall doors burst open as technicians rushed inside, panic on their faces, their equipment sparking and buzzing uncontrollably. "Council leader," one shouted, eyes wide. "The human signal. It's spreading across the galaxy." The hall erupted in chaos again. "Impossible. How? Humans have no worlds. Humans have no fleets." The technician shook his head violently. "It's not coming from ships. It's not coming from stations. It's coming from the stars themselves." The old council member whispered, "Star-based transmission. Only one species ever tried that." Another technician stumbled forward, holding a trembling tablet. "Every major communication beacon is receiving the same message, over and over, on every frequency." The screens around the hall flickered back to life, forced open by the same unseen power, and across every screen, glowing in white-blue light, a single message pulsed: "We bow to no one." The hall exploded in screams as the message repeated again, louder. The council leader grabbed the railing to steady himself, his wings pressed flat against his back. "Why now?" he whispered. "Why return now?" The old council member shut his eyes tightly. "Because we erased them. Because we pretended they were weak. Because we pretended they bowed. Because we pretended the empty seat meant nothing. His eyes opened, filled with a sadness that made even the guards hesitate. But humans don't bow. Humans walk away and grow. A young warrior species, trembling with fear, stuttered, "Council leader, what if humans are coming back?" The question suffocated the room. Every species held their breath. Every heart tightened. The council leader took a long, shaky breath, feeling his chest tighten with dread he had never known before. "If humans do return," he whispered, "they will not come as members." His voice trailed off. Every alien leaned forward, fear gripping their souls. "They will come as something far greater." Before anyone could speak, the whole screens cut again, to a star map. A single point on the map flashed. A location far outside council territory. A system once marked red. Restricted. Forbidden. A system that had been erased centuries ago. A name flickered under it. Faint at first, then burning bright. Sol. The council gasped as the map began receiving dozens of new signals. Pulses of energy from the long-forgotten system. Lights flickered again. The floor vibrated. The technician screamed, "Something is activating in the Sol system." But there's nothing there. Earth is dead. Earth is dust. No one lives there anymore. But the map disagreed. More energy pulses erupted, one after another, spreading through the void like awakening heartbeat rhythms. And then the council leader saw it. A dark shape moving on the edge of the map. Slow. Massive. Silent. The old council member collapsed into a seat, whispering, "They're returning, after all these years. They're really coming back," the technician shouted, "Council leader. The human signal is now overriding all council channels." And then, every speaker in the hall shook with one final message. Calm. Cold. Powerful. The council forgot why our seat was empty. The hall shook as the lights dimmed. Earth remembers. Silence. And soon, the galaxy will too. The screens went black. The hall plunged into darkness. And every species finally understood. Earth's seat was never abandoned. It was waiting. And now, its owner was coming home. Darkness filled the grand hall after the human message vanished. But it was not a peaceful darkness. It was the kind that felt alive, watching, waiting, pressing against every alien's chest until breathing itself felt like a struggle. And as the emergency lights blinked weakly back on, pale and trembling, the council members saw each other's terrified faces. Wide eyes, shaking limbs, feathers fluffed in panic, scales rippling with cold fear, and the truth that no one dared to speak out loud trembled in the air like a storm waiting to break. The youngest species clung to their elders, whispering, "Humans are coming," while others backed away from Seat 00 as if it might explode at any moment. Even the guards, trained to stand firm against rebellions and wars, could not hide the shaking in their hands. But the council leader, though trembling inside, forced his body up the steps, wings dragging behind him like dead weight, until he reached the glowing outline of Seat 00 and stared at it with a mixture of horror and memory, because he knew, deep in his bones, deep in the shadows of history, that this was not the beginning of something new, but the return of something ancient, something the galaxy ran from, something they pretended died but only slept. Before he could speak, the communication room door burst open and a team of terrified technicians stumbled inside, their screens flickering wildly, their voices overlapping with panic. "Council leader. The human signal. It's not stopping. It's spreading beyond council space." The outer ring stations just received the same transmission. Even the dead zones are reacting. The council leader felt his stomach twist. Impossible. Humans have no networks, no satellites, no relays left. The technician shoved a shaking screen into his hands. "Sir, they're not using ours. They're using something else." The screen displayed dozens of star systems blinking with the same message. "We bow to no one." A young diplomat shrieked. "This is a war threat. They're declaring rebellion." But the old council member shook his head slowly, painfully. "Humans don't threaten war. They deliver truth. If they wanted war, they wouldn't send a message. they would send fire. The room fell silent, fear sinking deeper. Another screen activated behind them, showing a slow-moving energy wave rippling from the direction of the Sol system, spreading quietly, steadily, like someone dipping their hand into the water of space and disturbing centuries of calm. "It's expanding," a technician whispered. "Every jump gate is detecting it, even the abandoned ones." The council leader's claws tightened around the railing. "What, exactly, is waking up in Sol?" No answer came. Instead, a faint vibration trembled under the floor, so soft most species didn't notice, but the old ones did. They froze. Their eyes widened. Their breathing stopped. Because they had felt this once long ago. "This," the old council member whispered with a shaking voice, "this is human tech activating." The younger races gasped because they had only heard stories. Stories that sounded like myths, always spoken like warnings teachers told children to scare them into obedience. Never provoke a human. Never corner a human. Never try to make a human kneel. Stories that older beings dismissed, but never truly forgot. While the hall panicked, the galaxy map flickered back on, and a new feed popped open, grainy, unstable, like something struggling to come through. "Is that a ship?" someone whispered. "No, it's too big. Is it a station?" The humans never built stations that huge. The image clarified for one brief second, just long enough for everyone to see it. A structure rising from the darkness of the Sol system. Black, angular, silent, massive, like a titan of steel wrapped in shadow. The council gasped. What is that? How are they powering it?" Humans never had this technology. They had 50 years to evolve, the old council member whispered. They had 50 years without interference, 50 years without limits, 50 years of freedom we stole from them. The council leader's wings folded tightly. "We didn't steal anything. They refused our guidance. They refused to kneel," the old one corrected, "and you punished them for it." The council leader trembled with anger and regret he could no longer hide. "I did what was needed to keep order." "No," the old member growled softly, surprising everyone with a rare flicker of rage in his frail voice. "You erased them because they made you feel small." The council gasped. Guards reached for weapons. The council leader's wings flared in fury, but before he could respond, the hall shook violently. Lights burst. Screens cracked. And then, another message. Not words this time. A visual. A glimpse into the Sol system. A broken planet in the background. A faint outline of a blue sphere. Earth. Not dead. Not silent. Sleeping. Healing. And at its orbit, hundreds of dim lights flickering like stars too close together. What are those? Satellites. Drones. Ships. The technician zoomed in and the entire hall fell silent as the truth formed in front of their eyes. They were ships. Human ships. Thousands of them. Not active. Not engaged. Just waiting in stillness like a silent army that had been resting for decades. A cold shiver ran through the crowd. Their fleet. It never died, someone whispered. They were building. They were preparing. For what? The old council member whispered the truth. For the day we came to take their freedom again. Panic exploded. We need to send a message. We need to offer peace. We need to hide. But the council leader, staring at the growing image of the human fleet, whispered something that quieted the room more effectively than any scream. We may be too late. Because at that moment, Seat 00 lit up again. The hologram reappeared. Not as a glitch. Not as a warning. But as a presence. A human silhouette stood above the seat again. This time clearer, sharper, more solid, as if drawing power from something awakening far away. The hall froze. The figure raised its head. This time, it spoke. You erased our name, the voice said softly. But the stars, remember. Every screen flickered to an image of human ships awakening, engines glowing faintly as if stretching after a long sleep. You erased our seat. Seat 00 pulsed with a bright blue aura. But our place was never yours to give. The hall shook again, Not from systems failing but from something far beyond the Council's reach. You erased our history. The screens showed Earth, cracked but alive, its skies glowing with electrical storms that pulsed in a rhythm synced perfectly with the human fleet. But history always returns. Every species watched in terrified awe. And then the figure said the one thing that shattered the last illusion the Council held. We were never gone. The screens went dark for a breath. A single breath. Then the stars flared with new markers, dozens of human fleets exiting dark space, stepping into the galaxy silently, like ghosts returning to claim their name. The hologram's voice dropped into a cold whisper that silenced every soul in the hall. We were watching. Another breath. The map updated again. Human fleets multiplying, surrounding Council borders. We were waiting. Another pulse. The Sol system glowed with unthinkable power. And now, the human silhouette stepped forward, its outline burning bright, its voice rising with quiet and terrifying certainty. The galaxy will remember why Earth never bowed. The hologram vanished. The hall dimmed again. And every species knew, the return of humans was not a threat. It was a judgment. Chaos roared through the Council hall the moment the human hologram vanished. Not the chaos of war or weapons but the deeper, heavier chaos of something the galaxy had never felt before. Shame, fear, and the cold realization that the species they erased from history had returned not as broken wanderers but as something far stronger, something silent, something patient, something that had waited in the dark for a moment just like this. Alarms screamed through the golden arches, lights flickering violently as the oath circle fell apart and ambassadors stumbled, pushed, cried, shouted orders that no one obeyed because every mind in the room was trapped on a single thought. Earth was awake. The Council leader trembled as he gripped the railing of the central dais, his claws digging so hard into the metal that sparks snapped under his palms, and he could feel the eyes of every species burning into him. Accusing, terrified, demanding answers he no longer had the power to give. Council leader, a young diplomat cried, voice cracking. What do we do? What happens now? But he had no answer. He didn't even know if answers existed anymore. The galaxy was no longer standing on the same ground it had stood on an hour ago. The return of humanity had cracked the foundation of everything the Council built. Before he could speak, the galaxy map shifted again, no longer showing clusters of stars or routes of trade or lines of alliances, but instead a new pattern. One made of silent human fleets moving like midnight shadows across the edges of Council space, their engines glowing faintly with a cold blue light that looked nothing like traditional fuel or known power signatures, and the room filled with horrified gasps. They are surrounding us. They've returned with an army. How did they build this much? How did we not see them? The old Council member lifted his trembling hand, voice breaking as he whispered, because we weren't looking. We believed our own lie. We believed they were weak. We believed they disappeared. His eyes filled with tears. But humans never disappear. They endure. The Council leader felt a weight crush down on him, the weight of 50 years of silence, lies, and erased chapters, the weight of a decision made long ago that he thought would fade into history, but instead it had returned like a blade pressed against his throat. He managed to steady his voice just enough to speak. Send a message, offer peace, explain the... Before he finished, every screen blinked white. A new message appeared. Not from a fleet. Not from a ship. From the Sol system itself. A single pulse of energy radiated outward like a star being born, and screens struggled to display the readings. What is that? A weapon. A signal. A supernova. But the technician closest to the screen whispered the only word that fit. Awakening. For a moment, the entire hall fell silent, every alien feeling a chill run over their skin, like something massive had turned its attention toward them. The screen zoomed in on the Sol system. Earth came into view. No longer quiet. No longer cracked. No longer forgotten. Blue light pulsed across its atmosphere, forming patterns too precise to be natural. Rings of energy, geometric lines, signals only one species could have built. Something was powering Earth from within. Something enormous. Something old. Something human. The old Council member clutched his chest. This is what they were preparing. This is why they left. The council leader shook his head in disbelief. Left? They were exiled. No, the old one whispered, voice breaking. They walked away because they refused to kneel. And in their exile, they found freedom. A hush rolled across the hall. Freedom. A word the council rarely used. A word humans built their entire existence around. Before anyone could speak again, a new wave of energy erupted from Earth. Slow, powerful, deliberate. It spread across the system, touching every silent ship, every forgotten satellite. And as it touched them one by one, their lights flickered to life. "They're activating," a technician whispered, voice trembling. All of them, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The council leader stared at the map, frozen in dread. This is not preparation for war." The old one nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks for the second time in a century. "No. This is preparation for their return." The hall shook as a new hologram appeared. This time not a humanoid figure but a massive symbol, extending across every screen, every panel, every reflective surface. A symbol the council erased. A symbol feared by those who remembered. A symbol that made every species in the hall instinctively straighten, as if gravity itself had shifted. The symbol of Earth's first council seat. A white circle. A blue line. Simple. Elegant. Unbreakable. The symbol pulsed once. Twice. And then a human voice spoke, not cold, not angry, but full of a calm power that slid into every ear like truth carved from steel. "For centuries, you held your oath circle." The lights dimmed. For centuries, species bowed. The room dropped into breathless silence. But Earth's seat remained empty. A crack echoed overhead as one of the crystal lights shattered, raining dust across the hall. "Not because we vanished." The symbol pulsed again. "But because we refused." The council leader stepped backward, wings trembling uncontrollably. He knew what came next. He feared it more than any war. "Humans do not kneel." The voice grew deeper. "We do not bend." The technicians hid behind their consoles. "We do not ask permission." The diplomats froze. "We stand." Every species in the hall felt their hearts tighten. "And now, we return." Seat 00 exploded with light, a pillar of blue fire shooting upward, spreading across the ceiling like veins of lightning. The hologram of the human silhouette reformed above it. Clearer now, more defined, the outline of a tall figure with shoulders straight, chin raised, eyes glowing with calm focus. This was no glitch, no ancient recording. This was live. This was present. This was human. "Council of the Galaxy," the voice said softly, "you forgot us." Every heart stopped. "But we never forgot you." The lights dimmed until only the human hologram remained visible. Earth's seat will no longer be empty. And then, the figure leaned forward. Eyes bright. Voice dropping into a whisper that shook every species to their core. "We bow to no one." The hologram vanished. The light died. Silence crushed the room. And every species understood the terrifying truth. The return of humans was not a message. Not a warning. Not a negotiation. It was a declaration. The galaxy had a new center of gravity. And Earth had come back to claim it. Fear hung in the council hall like a living shadow after the human hologram vanished. A thick heavy weight that pressed on every chest and made every breath feel like swallowing ice as the ambassadors stared at one another with wide haunted eyes, all asking the same silent question. What happens when a species that never bowed suddenly returns to a galaxy built on kneeling? No one dared to speak first, not even the warriors or the loudmouthed delegates who usually filled meetings with noise. Instead, everyone seemed frozen between disbelief and dread, because the truth rising around them was bigger than politics, bigger than alliances, bigger than anything the council had ever faced. Humanity, erased, forgotten, exiled, had come back not as victims or wanderers but as something terrifyingly calm and impossibly strong. The council leader tried to collect himself, standing tall even though his wings shook so badly the nearest guards noticed, and he opened his mouth to address the galaxy, but his voice broke before it escaped, turning into nothing but a dry whisper drowned by the growing murmur of fear spreading through the hall. "Council leader," a trembling diplomat cried. "We must send a peace envoy to the Sol system immediately." Another shouted, "No, if we show weakness, they will attack." "Attack?" a third screamed. "They don't need to attack. They could destroy us without firing a single shot." The arguments grew louder, sharper, more desperate, but the old council member raised a frail hand and the room fell silent, not because they respected him, but because the look in his eyes was the same look someone has when they see death walking toward them. "You speak as if humans want war," he whispered, voice soft but cutting through the noise like a blade. "But humans never wanted to rule this council. They wanted to be equal." The younger species shook their heads. Equal? They refused the oath circle. They refused to kneel. They refused tradition. Tradition, the old one repeated bitterly, that required every species to bow before a council throne. But humans believed no one should kneel to anyone. His voice broke. "And for that belief, we erased them." The hall fell into suffocating silence. Many lowered their eyes as the old one continued. "We labeled them dangerous, unstable, uncooperative. We turned our fear into law. We turned our insecurity into exile." His hands shook. "And now they have returned, not to take revenge, but to reclaim their dignity." The council leader stepped forward angrily, his voice finally returning. "Enough of this romanticizing. Humans left because they refused order. They chose chaos. But he stopped when the galaxy map flickered again. Every head snapped toward it. A new fleet had appeared. Not near the Sol system this time. Not near the outer rings. But deep inside council territory, right at the border of the core worlds. Silent. Motionless. Watching. Dozens of human ships hovered there like wolves at the edge of a campfire. Engines glowing softly, forming a perfect formation that looked less like a military blockade and more like a warning. "That's impossible," a technician whispered. "No species can cross our borders without detection. Humans can," the old one murmured. "They always could." The council leader's wings folded tightly against his back. "Why are they here?" A new message appeared on the screen. Not a voice. Not an image. Just text. "We seek what was ours. Nothing more." Fear twisted through the room. What was theirs? A quiet voice answered from the back. "Seat 00. The words hit the hall like a thunderbolt. They didn't want war. They didn't want territory. They didn't want power. They wanted respect, the one thing they were denied. The council leader swallowed hard. "Seat 00 is symbolic, a position only, after 50 years. You don't understand humans," the old one interrupted. "To them, symbols matter more than titles. Memory matters more than power. Honor matters more than control." Before the leader could respond, a new alert blared across the hall. This time, far more urgent. "Council leader," a technician screamed. "The human fleet, the one near the core worlds, it's moving. Toward us." "No," the technician's voice cracked. "Toward the oath circle." Gasps filled the hall. "They are coming here. To the capital. With that fleet." "Why?" The old council member took a shaky breath. "To take their seat." At that moment, the hall floor vibrated again. Soft at first, then steadily growing stronger. A rhythmic pulse like a massive heartbeat echoing through the capital city. Dust fell from the ceiling. Small cracks formed in the marble pillars. Screens flickered as if fighting interference from something impossibly close. And then, the skies above the council capital darkened. Every ambassador looked up through the massive glass ceiling as shadows began to pass overhead. Slow, colossal shadows that blocked out entire sections of sunlight. Human ships. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Moving silently above the city, not firing, not threatening. Simply taking position like a silent storm hanging across the sky. Citizens began to scream outside the hall. Sirens wailed through the city. Defense cannons powered up automatically, but before they could fire, every single one went offline at the same moment, shut down by an invisible override. A technician inside the hall shouted, "Our defense grid is failing." Someone, something, is overriding our systems. Another cried, the human fleet isn't even attacking. How are they shutting us down? The old council member whispered the answer. They learned. They evolved. They built what we feared they would build, without us to stop them. The council leader's wings twitched uncontrollably. What do they want from us? A deep voice answered behind him. Not from a speaker. Not from a hologram. But from the entrance of the hall. Every species turned toward the giant doors as they creaked open. Light poured in. Footsteps echoed. Slow. Heavy. Human. A real human. Not a projection. Not a ghost. Not a myth. A tall figure walked inside the hall, wearing simple black fabric, no armor, no weapons, no insignias, just a calm face and steady eyes that held a storm of patience and steel. Every species froze. Some stepped back. Some dropped to their knees without thinking. The human stopped in the center of the hall and looked directly at Seat 00. Dust lifted from it again as if welcoming its owner home. Then the human looked at the council leader. His voice was soft, dangerous in its softness. We came for what you took. The leader swallowed. Your seat, our dignity. The human stepped closer, eyes sharp with a sadness deeper than hatred. You erased us because we refused to kneel. You rewrote history because we refused your chains. The hall trembled under the weight of those words. But we did not return for revenge. The human placed a hand on Seat 00. The entire hall went silent. We returned for truth. And as the human slowly sat down in the forgotten throne, the lights of the hall flickered back to life. The galaxy map stabilized. The alarms went quiet. The human fleets outside stopped moving, hanging in perfect stillness like sentinels awaiting only one command. The hall felt different now, heavier, alive, watched. The human lifted his head with calm certainty. Earth's seat is no longer empty. He leaned back, eyes unblinking. And this time, his voice turned cold enough to freeze the room. The galaxy will not decide our place. We will. Silence swallowed the hall. And every species understood a truth far older and far more dangerous than war. Humanity was not demanding power. Humanity was reclaiming identity. And there was nothing in the galaxy more unstoppable than a human reclaiming what was theirs. Every soul in the council hall froze as the human sat on Seat 00, the forgotten throne that had waited for centuries, the seat everyone feared, the seat no one dared touch, and yet he sat there with a calmness so heavy it felt like gravity thickened in the room, pressing every species lower, making breaths shallow and hearts pound violently against ribs. For a long moment no one moved, not the guards gripping their powerless weapons, not the ambassadors trembling behind their insignias, not even the council leader whose wings drooped like wilted leaves as he watched everything he ever believed about order collapse silently in front of him. The hall that once echoed with pride now trembled with an ancient truth returning to claim a debt. The human rested one hand on the armrest, fingers brushing the carved symbol of Earth, still glowing faintly beneath the dust, and when his eyes rose to meet the council leaders, the leader felt something he had not felt since he was a child. Smallness, deep, suffocating smallness, as if standing before a mountain that had learned to walk. The human spoke softly, but the softness carried more weight than any threat the galaxy had ever known. This seat was never yours to erase. The words spread through the hall like cold fire, melting lies, burning excuses, forcing even the most stubborn species to lower their eyes. The council leader struggled to speak. We believed humans abandoned us. We believed, you believed only what made you comfortable. The human interrupted, voice calm but sharp like a knife made of truth. You feared a species that did not kneel. So you erased us instead of facing yourselves. The old council member bowed his head, tears forming again, whispering, we were wrong. But the human shook his head slowly. Wrong, yes. But that is not why we returned. A murmur rippled across the hall. If not for revenge, then why? The human answered without being asked. We did not come to conquer the council. Silence. We came to witness it. Confusion spread. Witness? The council leader frowned. If not to take control, then what do you want? Territory? Apology? Recognition? The human leaned back in the seat that had been empty for half a century. We want the truth restored. His eyes glowed faintly as lights flickered overhead. We want the history you buried returned to the galaxy. Gasps echoed. The youngest species stared in disbelief. You want your name returned to the records? The human nodded once. We want every child in every world to know who Earth was, and who we are now. The old council member whispered, You want the seats to bow to you? The human's eyes sharpened. No. We want them to stop bowing at all. Shock exploded. The hall trembled with the staggering meaning behind that statement. You want to end the Oath Circle? A trembling ambassador asked. The human nodded slowly. Yes. Because kneeling is not unity. Fear is not peace. Silence is not loyalty. He leaned forward, eyes burning with a calm power that shook the room. The council did not create order. It created obedience. The council leader stepped back as if struck. That obedience kept the galaxy safe. The human stood slowly, his presence filling the hall like a rising storm. No. It kept the council in control. Each word hit like a hammer. And it kept every species beneath you. The council leader tried to speak but choked on the truth. The hall shimmered as the human raised his voice, not loud, but deep, resonant, reaching into every corner of the chamber. We were exiled because we refused to kneel. And in our absence, your rules grew sharper, your chains grew heavier, your peace turned into fear. The hall fell silent as those words swept through the ambassadors' hearts like a flood breaking a dam. But then, suddenly, the floor shook. A tremor. Small at first. Then stronger. Stronger. The glass ceiling above flickered with shadow. A technician screamed from the balcony. Something is entering orbit. The council leader panicked. More human ships. But the human didn't move. He simply lifted his chin slowly, as if expecting this moment. On the galaxy map, new signals appeared, faster than light, but not using any known jump technology, moving like streaks of white fire. They weren't council ships. They weren't pirate ships. They weren't any species the galaxy recognized. The hall gasped. What are those? Another human fleet. A weapon. The old council member squinted with horror. No, this is something else. The ships were not shaped like council vessels. They were sleeker than human ships. More alive. More ancient. Like star-forged blades sailing through the void. The technician shouted again. They are hailing us. Put it on the main screen, the council leader ordered. But before the technicians could act, the human raised a hand. No, the screens obeyed him, switching automatically to the incoming transmission. A hologram flickered to life. An alien species no one in the room had ever seen. Tall, silver-skinned, eyes glowing like molten stars. Their voice vibrated through the room, calm and terrifying. We sensed Earth's awakening. Gasps erupted. This cannot be. Who are they? How do they know Earth? The silver figure continued. We warned the council centuries ago. You erased the humans, and in doing so, you awakened something older than your rule. The council leader felt his knees weaken. Who are you? The silver figure ignored him. Their star-like eyes turned toward the human standing at seat 00. And then, in front of the entire galaxy, the alien bowed. A deep bow. A respectful bow. The kind the council demanded from everyone, but which the humans never gave. The hall collapsed into shock. They are bowing to a human. This species bows to no one. What is happening? The silver being rose and spoke directly to the human. We heard your message. We bow to no one, including you. A faint half-smile crossed the human's lips. Respect, not submission, filled the air. The silver being continued, we come not to challenge Earth, but to warn the council. The whole hall tensed. Warn us of what? The council leader demanded. The silver being's eyes burned brighter. Of what comes after humanity wakes the stars. The room shivered. The human stepped forward. Speak. The alien's voice dropped to a whisper that chilled every being in the room. There is something in the dark. Something that only awakens when a species refuses to kneel. Something older than the council. Something drawn to defiance. The hall's lights flickered violently. A distant rumble echoed through the void. It is coming here, the alien warned. Drawn by your awakening. The human's eyes narrowed. Let it come. The silver being bowed once more. Then we will stand with you. And as their fleet shifted into formation above the capital, the hall realized something far more terrifying than any war. Humanity had not returned alone. Humanity had allies the galaxy had never seen. Humanity had awakened something ancient. Humanity had changed the rules. And the Council was no longer the center of the galaxy. Earth was. And something in the darkness was coming for all of them. The hall fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the ceiling itself was pressing down, every ambassador frozen in place as the silver-skinned alien finished speaking, their warning lingering like a cold echo in the bones of everyone present. Something ancient, something hungry, something awakened by defiance, was coming for the galaxy, drawn by the return of a species that refused to kneel. The council leader felt his wings sag under the crushing weight of fear and responsibility, his breath shaky as he tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong so quickly, humanity awakening. Forbidden fleets arriving, now unknown ancient forces moving through the dark, and for the first time in his long life, he understood what it truly meant for a species to be out of control of its own fate. The hall lights flickered again, softer this time, as if the entire capital was exhaling in fear, and in the center of it all stood the human, calm, steady, unshaken, one hand resting on seat 00 as if it had always belonged to him, and every species in the room watched him with a mix of terror and awe because he was not yelling, not threatening, not demanding, but simply standing there like a storm disguised in a quiet form. The silver-skinned alien turned toward him again, eyes glowing with starlight that seemed to carry the weight of galaxies behind them, and bowed once more, this time slower, deeper. "We will stand by Earth," they said, each word vibrating through the hall like a pulse of energy. "But understand this, the thing that comes, it does not bow either." A cold ripple passed through the room. The ambassadors looked at each other, fear rising anew. If it does not bow, is it hostile? Is it a weapon? Is it alive? The silver being's expression tightened, voice dropping to a low whisper. "It is not alive the way you understand life. And it is not hostile the way you understand war. It is hunger. It moves where defiance stirs. It consumes where pride rises. It devours what stands tall." The council leader stumbled backward. "You mean, it is coming for humans," the silver being said. "And it is coming for any who stand beside them." A suffocating silence swallowed the hall, thick and unbreakable, and then suddenly the galaxy map flickered violently as if struck by an invisible blow, lights bursting across the screen as new data streamed in faster than the system could process. "Incoming!" a technician screamed. Unknown energy signatures, far beyond our detection range, appearing on the outer edges of council space. The hall erupted into gasps and terrified cries as dozens, no, hundreds, of strange distortions appeared on the map, each one pulsing like a growing black wound spreading across the stars. "Council leader," another technician yelled. "Our long-range probes are failing. Whatever these things are, they're disrupting space itself." The council leader gripped the railing, his wings trembling violently. "Are those ships?" The technician shook his head, tears streaming from fear. "No. They don't have engines. They don't have mass. They're not even using hyperspace. Then what are they?" the leader whispered. But before the technician could answer, the human finally moved. Slowly, calmly, purposefully, he stepped toward the galaxy map, eyes narrowing as he studied the spreading distortions with the same quiet intensity he had shown since he arrived, and the hall instinctively parted for him, every species unwilling to stand in his path. When he reached the map, his voice was soft but carried through the hall like a cold wind. "These are not enemies." He paused. "Not yet." The silver beings stepped beside him, bowing their head. "They are drawn by your awakening. They sense strength. They sense pride. They sense identity. They sense refusal." The human nodded slightly. Then they come to test us. To test us, the silver being agreed, and to judge us. This caused immediate panic. Judge? Judge what? Judge who? The silver being turned to the room, eyes glowing brighter. Judge who is worthy to stand, and who deserves to kneel. A wave of fear burst across the hall. We deserve to kneel. We deserve to kneel. We deserve to kneel. The words whispered like a storm inside the minds of the weaker species. But the human didn't flinch. He simply looked at the silver being with a steady calm that sent chills across the room. They will not find us on our knees. The silver being bowed deeply. Then they will respect you. The council leader clutched his chest. You speak as if kneeling or standing determines our survival. Because it does, the human interrupted. The thing approaching is not a conqueror. It is a test. The old council member stepped forward, trembling. A test? Of what? The human's voice grew soft, almost sad. Of whether any species in this galaxy still has a heart strong enough to stay on its feet. A cold silence fell again. The ambassadors looked at each other in panic and shame. The council leader finally snapped. How are we supposed to fight something we don't understand? Something that can move through space without engines? Something that appears without mass? Something that eats defiance? The silver being answered. Voice calm but unyielding. Only those who kneel will be devoured. Those who stand will be judged. The council leader turned to the human, desperation in his voice. And what do you expect us to do? Stand beside you? After everything? After the history? After the exile? The human turned slowly, meeting the leader's eyes with a deep, quiet sadness. I do not expect anything from you. The leader blinked. Then why come back? The human breathed slowly, deeply, his voice carrying centuries of buried truth. Because this galaxy is still our home. And even if you erased us, we never erased you. Those words hit harder than any weapon. Several ambassadors bowed their heads in shame. The silver being stepped forward again. The ancient hunger will arrive soon. Our ships will form a barrier. Humanity's awakening will anchor the defense. The galaxy map trembled, new distortions appearing faster, closer, their shapes shifting like shadows trying to take form. The technicians screamed. It's close. It's very close. We need to evacuate the capital. Close the council gates. The human raised a hand. Silence spread instantly, like an order the universe itself obeyed. No one runs. His voice was steady as stone. No one kneels. He turned toward seat 00, eyes burning with ancient purpose, and spoke in a tone that made every species tremble not with fear, but with something else, hope. If the galaxy wants to survive what comes next, it must learn what humanity already knows. He placed his hand on the glowing symbol of Earth. Strength does not come from who bows the lowest. The hall went still. Strength comes from who stands the longest. The distortions on the map suddenly merged into one massive shape, massive enough to swallow entire systems, and the technicians screamed in terror. It's here! The hall shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights shattered. And as the ancient darkness tore into view, ripping open space itself, the human spoke one last line that echoed through the hall like thunder. Let it come. The ancient force roared into existence. And humanity stood waiting, seat reclaimed, allies gathered, identity unbroken. They would not kneel. Not now. Not ever. The moment the ancient darkness tore into the galaxy, the council hall felt as if reality itself had been split open. The air trembled, the floor vibrated like a heartbeat out of rhythm, the light above dimmed into thin shivering strands, and a low distant rumble rippled across the capital. The kind of sound that made every creature instinctively shrink, hide, or kneel, because it wasn't just noise, it was something older than stars, older than language, older than the council itself. The galaxy map exploded with red warnings as the massive distortion took shape. Slow, stretching, long tendrils of shadow unfurling like a colossal creature waking after a million years. Each movement bending space as if the universe were water and it was something unnatural rising from the depths. Gasps filled the hall. Screams echoed through the corridors. Entire species fell to their knees, trembling uncontrollably as the pressure from the entity washed through the capital like a flood of gravity. And in the center of it all, the human stood unmoved, one hand resting calmly on seat 00, his posture straight, his eyes locked onto the shadow forming on the holographic display. Calm, unwavering, the only being in the hall refusing to break. The council leader collapsed to his knees, wings trembling so violently he couldn't hold himself upright. What is that thing? He whispered, voice cracking in terror. The silver-skinned ally stepped forward, their glowing eyes flickering with ancient recognition. It is what we warned you of. A star-eater, a devourer of pride. A creature drawn not by planets or stars, but by will. The ambassadors gasped. By will. By pride. By defiance. The alien nodded slowly. It comes where species refuse to kneel. It comes where identity is strong. It comes where a people stand tall. Every gaze slowly turned to the human. Standing, unbroken, unbowed, and understanding spread through the room like cold fire. The creature came for humanity. The creature came because humanity awakened. The creature came because humanity stood. And humanity did not kneel. The ancient being outside roared, no sound, just vibration, sending shockwaves that cracked windows across the capital and knocked several ambassadors off their feet. The technicians screamed, shields failing. Systems collapsing. It's breaking our defenses without touching them. The council leader tried to stand but collapsed again, choking on fear. We cannot fight this. We cannot survive this. And for the first time in the entire ceremony, the human looked directly at him. Not with anger. Not with hatred. But with something far worse, disappointment. You fall before the battle has begun, he said softly. That is why it comes. The old council member, trembling on his cane, whispered, Then what hope do we have? The human stepped forward, his voice rising through the hall like a calm storm. Hope is not given. Hope is made. The silver being bowed. Your species carries the one thing this creature fears, unyielding will. The human nodded once. Then let us show it. He took another step toward the center of the hall, and as he did, every human ship in orbit began to move. Slowly at first, then with terrifying unity, their engines igniting in a synchronized wave of blue-white light that reflected off the glass ceiling like a rising second sun. The technicians gasped as they watched the human fleet break formation, spreading out into a massive circle around the capital world. They're surrounding us. They're forming a barrier. They're protecting us. And yet, the ancient entity kept coming, massive tendrils of shadow pulsing as it tore through space, consuming light, eating sound, bending gravity like paper. The closer it came, the heavier the hall felt, like an invisible hand was pressing all species downward, forcing them toward the floor, toward kneeling, toward submission. Some collapsed completely, others crawled, others screamed, but the human remained standing. A deep crack split across the ceiling as the ancient entity drew close enough for its silhouette to appear. An impossible shape with no clear form, like darkness pretending to be alive, a hole in the universe shaped like a predator searching for prey. The silver being whispered, voice shaking, It tests the strongest will first. The human slowly lifted his chin. Then let it test mine. And the creature seemed to hear him, because everything froze. The tendrils stopped moving. The gravity pressure tightened around the capital, squeezing the walls. The lights flickered, died, flickered again. And then, the darkness turned. Directly toward seat 00. Directly toward him. The council gasped as the whole galaxy map warped, the ancient being locking onto one single target. Earth's representative. A beam of black energy shot forward, not an attack, not a weapon, but a test, a force meant to crush will, to break identity, to force the human to bend, to kneel, to submit. Pressure slammed into the hall. Ambassadors collapsed instantly. The council leader's wings snapped flat against his back as he hit the floor. The silver being staggered backward, eyes dimming. Even the old council member crumpled, shaking violently as the force pressed down harder and harder, a tidal wave of gravity and hatred and hunger. But the human stayed standing. His legs shook. His breath grew heavy. The pressure crushed the air from the room. Cracks spread across the floor beneath his feet. His bones groaned audibly. Blood beaded at his temples. But he did not kneel. He clenched his jaw, lifted his head higher, and whispered through the crushing weight, "You can push." The floor shook harder. "You can break." The ceiling cracked again. "But you cannot take what humanity chooses." The shadow creature pushed harder, the pressure doubling, tripling, trying everything to force the human down. Yet he stood, trembling, breaking, but standing. The silver being whispered, awe in their voice. He is resisting it. No one resists it." The human took a shaking breath, voice breaking but still steady. "We bow to no one." The lights exploded overhead. The ancient entity recoiled, not in fear, but in recognition. It was a trial, and the trial was past. With a roar that rippled through the void, the creature shifted, its tendrils pulling back, its shape collapsing into itself like a storm shrinking under its own weight. It did not flee. It did not attack. It simply lowered its mass. As if bowing. The hall gasped. The ancient being bowed to humanity. The silver being fell to one knee in shock. Impossible, it submits to no species. But the human whispered, voice soft and filled with the strength of 1,000 worlds. It recognizes strength. It recognizes identity. It recognizes a species that stands. The creature pulsed once more, less threatening now, more curious, its massive shadow circling the human fleet. Studying, acknowledging, maybe even respecting. And then, it folded itself back into the void, disappearing into a silent ripple, leaving behind a trembling galaxy that had just witnessed something impossible. A human standing against an ancient force no council species had ever survived, and winning. Silence filled the hall. Not fearful silence. Reverent silence. Slowly, one by one, the ambassadors rose, not to kneel, but to stand. The silver being bowed their head toward the human. Earth has done what no council ever could. The human turned toward seat 00, placing a hand gently on its glowing surface. "We did not do this to lead you." He lifted his eyes toward the hall. "We did this to remind you." His voice echoed like a promise. "Strength is not in kneeling. Strength is in standing. Together." The hall felt brighter. The capital felt lighter. The galaxy felt changed. And the council leader, trembling with humility, whispered, "What now?" The human stepped forward, his presence filling the hall like light. "Now," he said softly, "the galaxy learns to stand." And with humanity's return, with ancient shadows bowing, with new allies gathering around Earth's unbroken flame, one truth became clear to every species in the hall. The age of kneeling was over. The age of standing had begun. And humanity stood tallest of all.